So something that I've noticed from working in the games industry is that there's very little advice for upcoming designers on where and how to come up with new ideas. Likely because it's difficult to offer any sort of tips and advice on something like that without sounding like a pretentious douchebag. Spouting out some garbage about meditating in a field up a mountain in Tibet. Or something. But there are a couple of objective techniques to coming up with game ideas that I've picked up over my time, one of which is the one-pager. For this, you're going to need one page and something to write on the page, like a crayon or an over-elaborate YouTube video. One pages are made up of three things: a snappy title, something to quickly get an idea of what your game is about into the listener's head, one sentence that fairly accurately describes your game, this is also referred to as the elevator pitch, and a razor. Nah, not that. Razors are basically a cool buzzword for three things that, if you smush them together, would accurately describe your idea for a video game. For example, if you were thinking of Uncharted, you would take, say, the cover-based shooting mechanics of Gears of War with the explorative elements of Tomb Raider, all combined into the sort of narrative plot devices of Indiana Jones. Or, for example, if you had the turn-based combat system from Final Fantasy, mixed with the adventure RPG elements of Fallout with character archetypes from games like World of Warcraft, you would get Divinity. Or, if you took the movie Scarface. So with these three cues and visual aids that make up your one-pager, you can quickly get a sort of high-level idea for what your game is going to be, packaged in a quick way that's easy to digest for your viewers. So let's do one as an example. I'm going to come up with a video game that I'm going to call The Funky Grandpa. And if I had to describe it in a sentence, it would be a beat matching game with a frail hero that becomes harder to control based on the mistakes you make over the course of a session. Then I would make up the razor of the gameplay mechanics of Guitar Hero with the on-screen awkward to control protagonist of Quap, combined with this guy. And with all this put together, you now have a presentable idea that you can take to your peers, friends and co-workers. Now, some of the eagle-eyed viewers among you might have noticed that one part of my razor isn't quite like the others. Something that doesn't quite fit in. So you don't necessarily have to have all three parts of your razor be video games. Ideally, you want to have at least one part of your razor be a video game because you want to convey what the basic gameplay experience might be. But the other two things could be anything. It could be your favourite movie or an album cover that you quite like, or the smell of gravel in the rain. Just make sure you dial it in a little bit before you end up being this geezer. But whatever elements you choose to make up your one-pager, the result is that you've got a high-level, presentable game idea that you can show to other people. It's obviously going to require a lot of embellishment and further thought moving forward. Your one-pager simply represents the core components of what you want your game to be. Is it a good idea? Look, okay, I ain't about to give away my good video game ideas in a free YouTube video, alright? You get Funky Grandpa. But Tindy, you rambling, nonsensical mess of a human, you said that this YouTube video was going to teach us how to come up with new game ideas. This was an idea you already had about a funky dancing man that you just presented to us. Well, shut the hell up, random viewer person. The one-pager also has the ability to conjure game ideas up from nowhere. You simply just assemble the one-pager in the reverse order. If you start with the razor, you can just come up with three random things, come up with a sentence that puts those three things together, and then slap a name on it. So let's go through another example, but try it this way round. So now I'm going to come up with a brand new game idea inspired by the letter P. So I'm going to go into my Steam library and find a game that begins with the letter P. So I've got Papers, Please. Nice. And then I'll zip over to my Xbox and I'll see what games I've got in here. And I've got, let's say, Prison Architect. And now for my third part of the razor, I'm going to go to my Netflix, and I've recently watched Peaky Blinders. So now that I have my razor, I need to try and come up with how I want to put those three things together into a game that I might like to make. So I'm going to take the micro game from Prison Architect and sort of weave in the moral complexity established meta game of Papers, Please under the theme and narrative of Peaky Blinders. So now I need to get a little bit creative and come up with a sentence that brings my three components together. So let's say a crime-focused RTS with NPCs that I command but can't necessarily trust. Then you just slap a witty name on it, like the Sneaky Crimers, and your one-pager is complete. Wow, this is way better than Funky Grandpa. Now sit back and check yourself out, because you have just totally come up with a whole new game idea from absolutely nowhere. Which basically means that you're a designer now. So move out of the way, Hideo and Peter and me. I created you.